The village of Sundarpur, on the outskirts of Jaipur, was still covered in the early morning mist. The sun had not even fully risen yet. But at Krishna Farm, a man had already begun his work long ago. His name was Mohan Sharma. He was 38 years old this year. He was the youngest and only son in a family with three elder sisters. Sweat had soaked the back of his shirt as he had just finished feeding the sheep. That work had become a part of Mohan's life for more than 10 years. Ever since the day his mother passed away, this farm had once been built with the lifelong labor of Mr. Hariram Sharma and his late wife, people whom the entire village respected. Today was the fifth death anniversary of Mrs. Sharda Devi, the mother who had spent her whole life taking care of her husband and children. In the yard of the old house, the altar had been cleaned carefully. The fragrant incense sticks rose gently into the peaceful morning air. Sitting on a wooden chair by the veranda, Mr. Hariram Sharma quietly looked at the photograph of his deceased wife. Old age and illness had bent his back. The constant pain in his legs made walking difficult. His hair was completely white. His face was deeply marked by the traces of time. But every time he looked at his wife's portrait, his eyes still turned red. Mohan walked over gently. Father, go inside and rest. I can take care of everything. Mr. Hariram nodded slightly. His eyes were filled with love and pride as he looked at his youngest son. For many years, Mohan had been the one taking care of him. Every meal, every pill, and every hospital visit. That morning, Mohan was especially happier than usual because all three of his sisters would be coming home: Sunita, Kavya, and Pooja. It had been many months since they last visited home. Mohan decided to ride to the town himself. He bought the foods his sisters had loved since childhood: milk sweets for Sunita, jalebi for Kavya, and the hot, crispy samosas that Pooja had always loved. The shopkeeper laughed. You still spoil your sisters just like before. Mohan only smiled gently. After all, they are my elder sisters. On the way back, he had no idea that this day would completely change his life. The day when family affection would be weighed against money. And the day when the younger brother, who had always loved his sisters with all his heart, was about to face the greatest pain of his life. Near noon, the sound of car horns echoed outside the gate. Three cars stopped one after another. Sunita stepped out first. She was wearing expensive clothes and bright, glittering gold jewelry. Kavya and Pooja also appeared, looking just as luxurious. Mohan immediately ran out to welcome them. Joy was clearly written all over his face. You're finally home. Father has been talking about you since this morning. Mr. Hariram walked out of the house with the help of his cane. His old eyes lit up with happiness. It had been a very long time since he had seen all four of his children standing together. The death anniversary ceremony took place in a solemn atmosphere. Everyone took turns lighting incense in front of Mrs. Sharda Devi's portrait. Mr. Hariram looked at the photo of his late wife and choked up. Your mother must be very happy. Today, our family is reunited again. But no one answered. After the meal, Mohan happily brought hot tea into the living room. He placed in front of each sister the snacks they had loved since childhood. But Sunita only glanced at them before pushing the plate aside. You still like doing these village-style things, don't you? Mohan froze. He forced a small smile. I remembered that you liked them. Kavya let out a cold laugh. That was 20 years ago. Pooja crossed her arms. We didn't come here to eat. The atmosphere in the room instantly became heavy. Sunita opened her handbag. A thick stack of documents was slammed onto the table. Bang! The sound startled Mr. Hariram. Sunita looked coldly at her younger brother. Let's speak frankly. We want to divide the property. Mohan thought he had misheard. What did you just say? Kavya pulled the documents toward him. Read it. The 2005 Inheritance Law. Daughters have equal rights as sons. Pooja smirked. Don't think that just because you stayed here and took care of father for a few years, everything belongs to you. Mohan's hands trembled slightly. But this is father's home. This is the farm that has supported our whole family. Sunita immediately cut him off. Then sell it. What's so difficult about that? Mr. Hariram was stunned. You children, this is the life's work of your father and mother. But Sunita did not even look at her father. Her eyes remained fixed on the documents. We need money. Kavya is buying a new apartment. Pooja is preparing to invest in a business. And I also have my own plans. Mohan looked at his three sisters in disbelief. On mother's death anniversary. You're really talking about this? Pooja laughed scornfully. Stop acting, Mohan. In this world, who lives on emotions anymore? Only money is real. Kavya also nodded. Don't think we don't know. You're enjoying all of our parents' property, while the three of us haven't received anything. Mr. Hariram was so angry that his hands trembled violently. How can you say such things? Mohan has sacrificed his whole life for this family. But Sunita immediately slammed the table. Father, stop defending him. All your life, you and mother only cared about your youngest son. What about us? The room fell into a terrifying silence. Mohan sat motionless. He could no longer recognize the three sisters he had always loved. That morning, he had still been happily buying each of the foods they liked. But now, standing before him were only three people who looked at family through the value of money. And Mohan had no idea that this was only the beginning of the greatest nightmare of his life. The entire room sank into a heavy silence. Mr. Hariram sat quietly on the wooden chair. His aged face had turned pale from anger and heartbreak. Mohan still said nothing. He only lowered his head and stared at the floor. For so many years, he had always believed that family was the most sacred thing. But today, the sisters he loved the most were calculating every meter of land with him, every single coin. Sunita crossed her arms. If father doesn't want to divide it willingly, then we will let the law handle it. Kavya nodded. Don't think we don't know the value of this farm. Land in this area is very expensive now. Pooja gave a faint, cold smile. We are only taking what belongs to us. At that very moment, Mr. Hariram suddenly stood up. His aged legs trembled, but his eyes had never looked so stern. You want to talk about rights? Fine. Then today, I will talk about responsibility. All three sisters froze. Mr. Hariram pointed at Mohan. 15 years ago, when I had an accident at the dairy processing workshop, the doctor said I needed emergency surgery. Do you still remember? No one answered. He continued. That day, Mohan had just received his admission letter to an engineering college. He had the chance to become an engineer, to escape the hardship of rural life. His voice began to tremble. But he tore up that admission letter so he could stay home and take care of me. The three sisters looked at one another, but they remained silent. He woke up at 4 in the morning, worked until late at night, took care of the farm, took me to the hospital, and paid off the medical debts. Mr. Hariram turned towards Sunita. Do you still remember your wedding? Where did that money come from? Sunita frowned slightly. He did not wait for an answer. I borrowed money from the bank. But Mohan was the one who paid back every single rupee. Then he looked at Kavya. Then came your wedding. And after that, Pooja's. Every time this family needed money, the one who stepped forward to carry the burden was always Mohan. His voice choked. Tears began to roll down his wrinkled cheeks. Meanwhile, have any of you ever asked me how much my medicine costs each month? Have you ever asked whether the farm had enough feed for the animals? Have you ever asked how your younger brother was living? The entire room fell completely silent, but what hurt Mohan the most was not his father's words. It was his sister's reaction. Sunita let out a cold laugh. Are you trying to list his merits now, father? Kavya immediately joined in. Mohan did those things because he lives here. He also benefits from the family property. Pooja shrugged. We never forced him to sacrifice. Those words were like a knife stabbing straight into the old father's heart. Mr. Hariram staggered and sat back down on the chair. Mohan hurried over to support his father. But the old man only wiped away his tears in silence. For the first time in his life, he felt that he had failed in raising his children. And he had no idea that things were about to go much further. Because only a few days later, The family would receive a letter that would shock the entire village. 3 days later, a postman appeared at the farm gate. Mr. Hariram was sitting on the veranda when he saw Mohan receive a large envelope stamped with legal seals. Just seeing the name of the law office gave him a bad feeling. Mohan opened the envelope. His face instantly turned pale. It was a notice of a lawsuit, and the ones who had filed it were his three sisters, Sunita, Kavya, and Pooja. Mr. Hariram tremblingly took the papers. His aged hands would not stop shaking. You children really went this far. Mohan forced a smile. It's all right, father. Everything will be fine. But deep in his heart, he understood that nothing was the same anymore. 1 week later, the first mediation hearing was held. On the other side of the courtroom, his three sisters sat beside lawyer Rajiv Malhotra. There was no longer any trace of affection for their younger brother on their faces. Lawyer Rajiv stood up. He looked straight at Mohan. My clients have been deprived of their inheritance rights for many years. This man deliberately occupied all of the family property. The courtroom began to murmur. But that was only the beginning. Lawyer Rajiv continued. Not only that, he also mistreated his old and sick father. He failed to take proper care of him, causing the old man's health to decline day by day. Mr. Hariram immediately stood up. That is not true, completely untrue. But the lawyer coldly interrupted him. Please maintain order. Then he turned toward the judge. We have a witness. At that moment, a man slowly walked into the courtroom. The moment Mohan saw him, his whole body froze. It was Mahesh Verma, the neighbor who lived just a few houses away from him. The man Mohan had known for more than 20 years. When Mahesh went bankrupt, Mohan had lent him money and never asked for it back. When Mahesh's son had an accident, Mohan was the one who took the boy to the hospital in the middle of the night. A few months earlier, he had even helped repair the roof of Mahesh's house after it was blown away by a storm. And yet today, Mahesh was standing on the opposite side. He wore a new set of clothes. A shiny watch was on his wrist. His eyes kept avoiding Mohan's gaze. Mahesh raised his hand and took the oath. Then he began to lie. I saw Mohan scold his father many times. There was one night when Mr. Hariram sat outside in the yard until very late. No one cared for him. I even heard the old man crying. The courtroom immediately erupted into whispers. Mahesh continued. Mohan always saw his father as a burden. I witnessed it with my own eyes. Every lie that rang out felt like a knife stabbing into Mohan's heart. But things still did not stop there. Lawyer Rajiv smiled faintly. Your Honor, we have one more witness. The courtroom door opened again. A woman around 50 years old walked in. It was Rekha Sharma. She lived across from Mohan's farm many years ago. When her husband lost his job, Mohan's family often gave them food and milk. When her daughter fell ill, it was Mohan who helped pay part of the hospital fees. But today, she too stood on the side of those who wanted to destroy him. Rekha stepped onto the witness stand. She lowered her head, avoiding Mohan's eyes. Then she began to testify. I also witnessed many things. Mohan is not as filial as everyone thinks. Many times, I heard him arguing with his father. There were days when Mr. Hariram had to eat alone. She even pretended to wipe away tears. I felt so sorry for the old man. Hearing that, Mr. Hariram could hardly bear it any longer. He slammed his cane hard against the floor. Shut your mouth. You are lying. The entire courtroom fell silent. Mr. Hariram trembled as he pointed at Rekha. When your family was in trouble, it was Mohan who helped you. And today, you dare to slander him? For one brief moment, Rekha lowered her head. But then she looked toward lawyer Rajiv and continued repeating the testimony that had clearly been prepared in advance. Mohan sat motionless. The pain no longer came from the lawsuit. It came from betrayal. Two neighbors, two people who had once received help from his family. Now they stood before the court, using lies in exchange for money. What hurt Mohan even more was that his three sisters still sat there silently. They did not object. They did not explain. Not one of them stood up to defend the truth. Mohan turned to look at his sisters. He hoped that at least one of them would speak up. But Sunita only coldly turned her face away. Kavya calmly looked at her phone, and Pooja did not even bother to look at her younger brother. In that moment, Mohan understood. In their eyes, he was no longer their younger brother. He was only an obstacle standing between them and the money they wanted. The mediation hearing ended in a heavy atmosphere. When they returned home, Mr. Hariram sat silently for a long time in front of his late wife's portrait. Tears streamed down his aged face. Sharda, did I raise our children the wrong way? But the tragedy of the Sharma family had still not come to an end, because only a few weeks later, on the day of Raksha Bandhan, something happened that completely shattered Mohan's heart. Just a few days before Raksha Bandhan, the first trial was held. After many hours of arguments, the judge declared, all the property must be sold. The money will be divided equally among the four siblings. The entire courtroom fell silent. Mr. Hariram was stunned, and Mohan only lowered his head. He was not afraid of losing money, but this farm was the life's work of his parents. It was the place he had spent nearly 20 years protecting. What hurt him the most was that lies had defeated the truth. After walking out of the court, Mohan accidentally overheard his sisters talking. Sunita smiled. Finally, we got our share. Kavya laughed. We should have done this many years ago. Pooja said coldly. He should know that property doesn't belong to him alone. None of them looked toward their younger brother standing behind them. In that moment, Mohan understood. He had lost his sisters a very long time ago. A few days later, Raksha Bandhan arrived. From early morning, Mohan kept looking toward the gate again and again, even though he knew very well that no one would return. But deep in his heart, he still hoped. He hoped his sisters would remember their childhood years, remember their late mother, remember the bond between them. But from morning until night, the gate remained silent. Not a single person appeared. As the sun slowly began to set, Mohan quietly opened an old box. Inside were still the Rakhi threads from many years ago. At that very moment, his two children walked in. Priya placed her piggy bank on the table. Sonu did the same. Father, if our aunts need money, please take my money. I don't want them to make you sad anymore. Hearing those words, Mohan could no longer hold back his tears. He hugged his two children tightly. Mr. Hariram quietly turned his face away. His three grown daughters had forgotten the meaning of Raksha Bandhan. But these two children understood it better than anyone. That evening, Mohan's lawyer came to see him. After reviewing the case files, he said with certainty, I believe you. There are too many unusual things in this case. We will appeal. Mohan looked at his elderly father sitting on the veranda. Then he nodded slightly. I am not appealing because of the property. I am appealing for the honor of my parents. A few days later, the appeal was submitted to the High Court. No one knew that. The new judge was preparing to open a secret investigation. An investigation that would make every liar pay the price. A few weeks later, the appeal hearing officially took place. This time, the case was heard by Judge Raghunandan Prasad, a man known for being strict and fair. From the moment he reviewed the case file, he felt that something was not right. The testimonies were too similar. The details contradicted one another. And especially, there was no evidence proving that Mohan had mistreated his father. Before the trial date, the judge secretly sent an investigator to Sundarpur village. For many days, this person quietly observed the life of the Sharma family. He saw with his own eyes Mohan waking up before dawn. He saw him take his father to medical checkups, give his father medicine, cook for him, and care for Mr. Hariram like a child. He also met the villagers and listened as they told him about the years Mohan had sacrificed for his family. When the report was submitted, Judge Raghunandan immediately understood. Someone had lied before the court. On the final day of the trial, the courtroom was packed with people. The judge looked straight at Mahesh and Rekha. Mr. Mahesh Verma, Mrs. Rekha Sharma, are you certain that you want to keep your testimonies unchanged? The two looked at each other. Sweat began rolling down their foreheads, but they still nodded. The judge then placed a file on the table. The investigation evidence shows that you received money to give false testimony. Mahesh's face instantly turned pale. Rekha could barely remain standing. A few minutes later, both of them lowered their heads and admitted the truth. They confessed that lawyer Rajiv and Sunita's husband had promised to pay them in exchange for favorable testimony. The entire courtroom erupted. The three sisters were stunned. Lawyer Rajiv could no longer maintain his previous confidence. The judge slammed his gavel hard on the bench. This is an act of deceiving the court and a serious insult to justice. Then he turned to Sunita, Kavya, and Pooja. You have inheritance rights under the law, but you do not have the right to destroy another person's life with lies. All three lowered their heads. No one dared to look up. But what shocked everyone the most was the next ruling. The judge said, "The court agrees to consider the division of property. But first, your husbands must also sign a commitment to divide their own family property with their sisters under the same principle." The entire courtroom fell completely silent. Sunita immediately turned to look at her husband. Kavya and Pooja did the same. No one could say a word. Only a few minutes later, it was those very husbands who asked their wives to withdraw the lawsuit. They did not want to lose their own property. The greedy plan that had lasted for months collapsed right on the spot. In the end, the court rejected all claims based on false testimony. The three sisters were fined a large amount of money for deliberately deceiving the court. Lawyer Rajiv was suspended from practicing law, and Mahesh and Rekha had to publicly apologize to the Sharma family. When the trial ended, Mr. Hariram burst into tears. He hugged his son tightly. "I'm sorry. I let you suffer too much." Mohan shook his head. Then he gently helped his father stand up. For the first time in months, he felt peace in his heart. He had protected the farm, protected the honor of his parents, and most importantly, protected the truth. On the way home, Priya and Sonu ran over and hugged their father. Mr. Hariram looked at his grandchildren and smiled softly. Perhaps he had been disappointed in his three daughters, but he knew kindness, filial devotion, and love for family had still been passed down to the next generation. And sometimes, justice may arrive late, but it will still come to those who never give up on the truth. News of the court's ruling quickly spread throughout Sundarpur. Those who had once doubted Mohan now knew the truth. As for Sunita, Kavya, and Pooja, they became the center of criticism. For the first time in their lives, the three women understood what it felt like to be turned away by everyone. The huge fine from the court left them struggling. But what hurt even more was that their husbands began blaming them every single day. "You turned this family into a joke. All of this happened because of greed." There were no more words of encouragement, no more support. All they received was disappointment. A few weeks later, all three decided to return home, the home they had stayed away from for many months. When they stepped through the familiar gate, none of them could keep their arrogance anymore. Mr. Hariram was sitting on the veranda. His hair was completely white. His aged face looked much older after months of suffering. Seeing his daughters, he only turned his face away in silence. Sunita was the first to burst into tears. Then Kavya. Then Pooja. All three knelt before their father. "Father, Father, we were wrong. Please forgive us." But Mr. Hariram did not answer. Silent tears rolled down his aged face. He had waited for these words for a very long time. But the wounds in his heart could not heal in just one day. At that moment, Mohan walked out of the house. Seeing their younger brother, all three sisters lowered their heads. They no longer had the courage to look him in the eye. Sunita choked back her tears. "Mohan, can you forgive us?" The space fell silent. After a long while, Mohan finally spoke. "Do you know what hurt me the most?" The three sisters burst into tears. Mohan looked at them. "It wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't the money. What hurt me was that you believed outsiders more than your own family. And what hurt even more was that you were willing to destroy father to achieve your goal." No one could raise their head. Those words were like a mirror reflecting all of their mistakes. Finally, Mohan stepped forward. He helped each of his sisters stand up. We are still one family, but from today on, live in a way that will make Mother in heaven proud. All three sisters broke down crying. For the first time in many months, the Sharma family sat together again under one roof. No one mentioned the property. No one mentioned the lawsuit. Only people who had learned the most expensive lesson of their lives remained, that property can be earned again, money can be earned again. But once family love is lost, some things may never return. And that is the price greed always forces people to pay.